Saturday, Iceland will vote on whether to resume negotiations on joining the European Union. A yes vote would restart negotiations in Brussels, while a no vote would be a setback for the EU's enlargement drive. Iceland previously applied to join the bloc in 2009 following a financial crisis, but these negotiations were eventually suspended after a Eurosceptic coalition came into power in 2013. By then, Iceland's economy had largely recovered, and public support for joining the bloc also faded, with fisheries being a main point of contention. However, a reversal came in 2024 when a pro-EU coalition government took office. Since then, major geopolitical developments reshaped the international landscape, such as US President Donald Trump threatening to seize Greenland and the Arctic becoming a hot spot for rare earth minerals. This made a deeper cooperation with the EU a key variable in safeguarding Iceland. Opinion polls suggest the results are expected to be very close, with farming and fishing remaining among the most contentious issues.
6 EU countries are intensifying calls for a bloc-wide windfall tax on oil companies as profits surge amid the war in the Middle East. Finance ministers from Germany, Italy, Austria, Poland and Portugal, along with Spain's economy minister, urged Ireland to put the issue on the agenda for next month's meeting of EU finance chiefs in Dublin. The ministers called for an EU-wide framework to tax windfall profits, drawing on the temporary levy introduced in 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Beyond the proposal, Germany's finance minister Lars Klingbeil said that excessive crisis profits should be returned to consumers. Energy companies have posted major earnings as the war disrupted shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. However, the EU has not yet signaled plans for a new levy. The letter remains a preliminary draft while political divisions persist within member states, including Germany.
A landslide at a waste site in Guinea early on Sunday has killed 30 people and injured several others. Heavy rain caused a mound of rubbish to collapse, burying nearby tents and shacks and destroying several homes.
Première partie qui s'est écoulée, les gens ont essayé un peu de venir au secours. Est-ce qu'il n'y a pas de gens en bas? Est-ce qu'il n'y a pas les gens en bas? C'est ainsi que les gens sont venus en courant. Et quand ils sont venus en courant, ils sont montés sur les ordures pour voir s'il y a personne. C'est ainsi maintenant la deuxième partie a cédé en 3 temps, en cascade. Et c'est ça qui s'est déversé sur les personnes maintenant.
The waste site had been designated for closure on that same Sunday. Days prior to the incident, the government had given residents living nearby eviction notices. According to local residents, they'd been asking for the closure of the dump for months.
Nous, la jeunesse d'Aslam, on a tout fait pour éviter cela. Donc, mais ça n'a pas empêché que cet événement ait lieu. Parce qu'on a organisé des sittings, on a organisé des sacrifices. On a invité les responsables des départements concernés, mais ils n'ont pas pris la chose au sérieux. Donc du coup, ce qui a fait aujourd'hui cet éboulement, moi j'accuse l'État. Parce qu'ils n'ont pas pris des mesures pour que la décharge soit fermée. Pourtant, ils nous avaient promis, depuis ça fait 1 an.
A search and rescue operation was launched to try and find survivors.
Europe continues to face severe weather with wildfires, floods and storms affecting several countries. In Serbia, an EU response involving helicopters and firefighters is helping battle a blaze that has engulfed more than 1,600 hectares in the Deliblatska Paskara Nature Reserve. A Russian Ilyushin water bomber and Serbian army helicopters are also assisting. Beyond Serbia, a large wildfire near Bosnia-Croatia border forced village evacuations and closed the main highway between Trebnice and Dubrovnik. Croatian firefighters joined the response as strong winds pushed the flames inland. In Spain, flooding in Tarragona injured 11 people after more than 145 millimeters of rain fell in some areas. Meanwhile, firefighters in Valencia stabilized a wildfire that burned around 630 hectares and forced more than 1,000 people to evacuate. Further north, Poland recorded more than 6,500 storm-related incidents since Friday. 12 scout camps were evacuated, while conditions have since improved across much of the country.
Around 10,000 people took to the streets of Stockholm, the Swedish capital, in protest against human-induced climate change, weeks ahead of a 13th September general election where the issue is top among Swedish voters' concerns. Sunday's protest came as experts have warned that the government's climate policy jeopardizes Sweden's emissions-cutting goals and to achieve net zero emissions by 2045.
There's absolutely no party in Sweden who are even proposing politics in line with anything close to what science would take for us to avoid a climate disaster. I do not have hope in our elected officials, no, but I have hope in people, yes.
Since taking power in 2022, Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson's right-wing government has cut petrol taxes and reduced requirements for petrol suppliers to add low-carbon alternatives to their mix. Swedes will go to the polls to elect a new parliament with the ruling right-wing bloc trailing in opinion polls and making a change of government likely.
Wildfires across Europe are exposing a potentially deadly threat beneath the landscape. Unexploded bombs and mines left from World Wars I and II. Some weapons have exploded in intense heat, with blasts reported in France, Belgium, Germany and the Netherlands. In Belgium, fires have spread across former battlefields, including the High Fence, where emergency services have been adapting to the risk of buried munitions. Beyond the immediate threat to firefighters, Belgium's Explosive Ordnance Disposal Service responds to more than 3,000 calls every year and disposes of up to 250 tons of wartime munitions. Climate change is increasing the risks, researchers say, as extreme heat and drought can trigger explosives or expose weapons hidden underground. Drought has also revealed weapons in rivers and lakes. In Slovakia, falling water exposed 2 naval mines, while bombs emerged from receding waters in Hungary and Germany.
A relic from World War II that everyone has been talking about for weeks. This motorcycle has laid in the mud of the Danube for more than 80 years. Low water levels in Budapest have exposed the wreckage. Euronews returned to the site of the discovery.
Hier lagen sehr viele Trümmerfahrzeuge aus der letzten Zeit des Krieges in Budapest. Und diese Trümmer wurden hier alles runtergeschoben, direkt nach dem Krieg. Und erst später kamen dann diese Felsen dann drauf.
Fighting raged around Budapest for 102 days in 1945. Tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians died. To commemorate the battles for Budapest, the motorcycle recovered from the Danube will later be part of an exhibition.
Wir haben eine reiche Sammlung von den Geräten des Zweiten Weltkrieges und dazu wird es eingestellt ein Prachtstück. Unser Ziel ist damit eine Ausstellung oder in der Ausstellung eine solche Prachtstück zeigen, was zu den Kämpfen für Budapest wird eine gravierendes Stück dazu.
What the mud had preserved over decades is now becoming visible piece by piece. In addition to the motorcycle, there is also equipment and military identity tags belonging to 2 soldiers.
Die Gebeine wurden aufgenommen und in das Depot geliefert, also in den größten Soldatenfriedhof des Volksbundes in Ungarn, den Sammelfriedhof Budaörs. Da wurden die Gebeine gereinigt, wurden anthropologisch aufgenommen, erfasst und werden dann im Herbst, im Oktober oder November mit den anderen in diesem Jahr gefundenen Soldaten eingebettet.
Until then, the experts are trying to find out more about the 2 men.
Wenn er gefallen wäre, dann hätten ihn seine Kameraden hätten die Erkennungsmarke gebrochen. Der obere Teil bleibt bei dem Soldaten mit den 2 Löchern und der untere Teil nehmen die Kameraden an sich und schicken an die zentrale Stelle.
This would give the fallen soldiers a grave after more than 80 years and perhaps one bearing their names. For the Volksbund and the Hungarian Institute and Museum of Military History, remembrance is also a form of peace work.
Every year on August 15th, hundreds of members of the Greek community return to Imvros, or Goxeada in Turkish, to celebrate the Dormition of the Virgin Mary. The Greek community once constituted the majority of the island's population. Now the annual festival brings people together.
Filmin sonu gibi. Bence bu desteklenmeli. barışa da katkısı olur aslında diye düşünüyorum.
Müziğin iyileştirici yanı. Yaşatmak istiyoruz.
Leading the return of the Greeks is the island's most famous son, Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew. Every year he returns to Imvros to celebrate the Feast of the Assumption. Many fear, however, that the island's Greek cultural heritage and traditions are on the verge of disappearing.
Çoğu Yunanistan gelir ama Amerika'dan da Avrupa'dan pek çok gelir. Ta Avustralya'dan beri. Çünkü burada vatanımızdır. Ama ne yapalım? Öyle yavaş yavaş kayboluyor. Eski bir vatan kayboluyor bizim için.
Yorgos Bakis was born on the island. He left at the age of 18 because of the violence and returned after his retirement.
İstimlak etti devlet. Sadece köy ve köyün çevresinde bazı bahçeler, bazı yerler bıraktılar. Mecbur yavaş yavaş aileler gitmeye başladı.
Timoleon Chaknis was born on the island. He left also and returned after he retired. Today, he teaches his songs to young musicians on the island.
Bu parçalar hepsi buralı. Kimseye yazmadı. Ben yavaş yavaş yazdım. Ve devam ediliyor. Yani genç çocuklar şimdi bunları yapıyorlar. Bazıları yapıyorlar. Çünkü prognostika logaryasmona kano ray ray ray.